Zilog and Moto was really going in the time machine for this one. No flux capacitors needed though. Today we're going to take a look at the two pack-in titles for the Master System, Hang On and Safari Hunt, combined in this neat multi-card. Now, what other system came with a pack-in cartridge that had two games on it, with one showcasing the system's light gun? Yeah, the NES comparison is pretty apt, with of course most original run NES coming with the Super Mario Bros. Duck Hunt combination. And while Duck Hunt vs. Safari Hunt is a bit of a stalemate, comparing Super Mario Bros., the second game in the best-selling series in the history of the world, to Hang On, a decent arcade racing game for its time, isn't as direct. This review will probably be one of the shortest ones, as these games aren't terribly deep due to their content and age, but I will at least try to give a thorough look at both games. So without further ado, let's take a closer look at the two games that would give gamers all over the United States their first experience with the fledgling Master System in September of 1986. Okay, here we go, some old school Master System action. You can immediately tell this is a Master System title due to the classic white and blue cover with black title. If you notice down at the bottom of the cover, we got pictures here of both Hang On and Safari Hunt, respectively. Similar to how other Master System games had some sort of cartoon representing the game underneath the game's title on the cover. Also, notice this blue stripe in the middle, telling you what you already knew, that this is a combo cartridge with two games. If you check the spine of the case, you'll see a similar blue line highlighting the games and the combo cartridge aspect. When you see this on the shelf, you can immediately tell from across the room which game this is due to its unique look. The Master System had only two other combo cartridge releases, Marksman Shooting Trap Shooting, and the somewhat rare Astro Warrior Pit Pot, which actually was the only way to play Pit Pot in the United States and Europe. This particular copy is in damn good shape, with no damage to the cover anywhere. The cover insert looking in great shape, and even the hang tab being intact on the top of the box. Something we haven't seen in the last few reviews I've done. The back cover gives us a picture from each game. You can kind of see there. And attempts to promote each game underneath. So we got Hang On up here at the top, and then Safari Hunt down here at the bottom. And I do mean attempts, because while I'm probably not the best Hang On player in the world, it's not that complicated, and I can guarantee counter steering is not a thing in the game. But the rest is pretty accurate. As we open the inside, you'll see the cartridge and a manual that is in immaculate condition. You just kind of see just how flat it is. It's not bent out at all. And obviously, maybe immaculate's a bit much, because I mean you can see like there's a little smudge here, and you know there's like a little bit of creasing here, but you know you can definitely tell that this has been taken care of. As you go to read things in the manual, you'll see that it's kind of split down the middle, more or less, with the first half of the manual being about Hang On, and the second half of the manual dealing with Safari Hunt. And at the end, you know, you'll get the sort of standard scorebook high score section. It's pretty common for the Master System manuals. There's not a whole lot to explain about these two games, but the manual does cover them both in detail, except for one small bit. If you look at the Safari Hunt section, it goes into detail about how each round consists of 3 scenes. Well, somewhere in here. I can't find it right at the moment. But anyway. But then it lists a point total to advance to the next round. That part I do know. That's right here. And these scores are just, it's confusing and it's not accurate. And the fact, oh, here it is. Yeah, it's talking about the scenes per round and everything. It's just, there is no scenes per round. It's just rounds are rounds. That's, yeah, some of them have different, graphical backgrounds, but, each scene is a scene. There's not really any rounds. I mean, I'm sorry, each round is a round. There are no scenes to speak of. But anyway, other than that, it's a good manual. It's definitely, it does what it's supposed to do. But anyway, enough about all that. Let's get to the games. So I'm actually going to flip the order here and talk about Safari Hunt first. And just as a disclaimer, if you think the video for Safari Hunt looks to be in lesser quality than what's in my other videos, or hang on later in the video, I'll explain why. As you probably know, old school light gun games aren't playable on flat screen TVs. They need a CRT to function. I don't own a CRT, and I'm not exactly sure how I'd hook everything up to do a capture in that manner. I'm sure I could figure out something, but regardless, for all gun games on Zilog and Moto, I'll be quote-unquote cheating and playing them on an emulator, and then recording the video from the emulator. Right now, that emulator of choice is Sega Fusion, and Sega produces a nice AVI dump of the video, which my production video software can't read. So I have to convert that AVI to MPEG-4, and then I can insert that into my editing software. And unfortunately, all those jumps cause the video to degrade a little bit. It's still decent but if you look closely, you can tell. Thankfully, there's not that many light gun games out there for these systems, so these recordings will be few and far between. Now that all that technical mumbo-jumbo is out of the way, we can talk about Safari Hunt, a game that I wholeheartedly think is better than Duck Hunt. Why? Well, for one, you don't just hunt ducks. Okay, I know, there's two modes in Duck Hunt, one for ducks and one for skeet, but still, like I alluded to before I was complaining about the manual, Safari Hunt is based around 3 repeating scenes that consist of individual rounds. The manual has this wrong, in that it states 3 scenes comprise a round. The first scene takes place by a lake, in the part that's probably the most reminiscent of Duck Hunt. Your target on the screen consists of ducks, rabbits, and flying fish. The next scene is in a forest setting, with birds, armadillos, and bears to target. And the final scene has you exploring a jungle, and gives you spiders, bats, monkeys, and panthers to shoot at. Also, the manual gets the order of the scenes wrong, flipping the forest and jungle scenes. The concept of Safari Hunt is pretty simple. Each scene you're given 30 shots to shoot as many animals as you can, and if you're smart, you'll prioritize certain animals over others, because to advance to the next scene, you have to score a minimum cumulative amount of points that starts out at a lower number per round, and then after you get 10 rounds in, every round thereafter you have to score a minimum of 15,000 points to keep the pace and move on. The nice thing about the way the game is set up, since the total needed to score is cumulative, is if you have a really good scene, that will allow you to bank extra points to balance out a potentially bad scene. Also, since the animals all have different values, certain scenes you will just end up scoring more than others on average, so certain scenes are just naturally harder to hit that 15k limit than others. Also, in one more final screw-up, the manual gets the amount necessary to move on to each scene wrong, so you can't go by that. It almost makes me think that the game manual was written based on a beta copy of the game, and changes were made to the game after they went to press. I can't think of another game I've seen that have a manual this inaccurate, but I guess I've got another 1,200 games to go as well. There's not really much to discuss here. Supposedly, if you pass 69 scenes, or 13 scene rotations, you will beat the game and get a short ending screen. I simply can't imagine playing the game for that long. It took me 28 minutes to get to the end of round 29, so extrapolating that, you have to play the game for about an hour and 10 minutes to quote-unquote finish the game. And that's just a total chore. While the game gets a little more difficult after the first 3 scenes, on your second rotation that difficulty more or less doesn't change going forward. To say it was incredibly boring after about the first 9 rounds or so is an understatement. The graphics in the game are primitive, but colorful, and better than Duck Hunt's. The sound is almost non-existent, with 2 shot sounds depending on whether you hit the animal or not, and then music at the end of each round on its score total screen. Since I didn't actually play the game with a phaser, I can't say this next part for certain, but at least on an emulated version, the hitboxes of the animals seem accurate, and I feel like with proper strategy, the game is very beatable, if you can manage to just want to play the game for an hour. I'm going to give Safari Hunt 2 stars, because there's just not much game here other than a basic shooting gallery. I think it's better than its direct NES competition, but that's not really saying much, and considering the Master System is a more powerful system, it really should be. Now, on to Hang On. Hang On, if you're not familiar, is based on the arcade title of the same name. The arcade version came in a few different flavors, including one where you could sit on a motorcycle to control the in-game bike. Hang On proved popular, and later on had a sequel called Super Hang On, that would get a Genesis conversion that we'll cover in about 100 episodes or so. Hang On is similar to Outrun and other later Sega arcade racing games, to where you have a limited amount of time to race through a stage, and if you pass through that stage in time, you will be awarded time on top of what you have left to keep progressing through the stages until you finally finish the 5th and final stage. For the home version, Hang On gives you the choice to start on one of 3 difficulty levels, which are listed with the ingenious names of levels 1, 2, and 3. While there's a difference in difficulty between 1 and 3, it's not a huge jump. The biggest difference I could really tell on playing between levels 1 and 3 is that in level 3 you will frequently see 3 rival bikes on the screen at a time, versus only 2 on level 1. And on level 3 the rival motorcycles will frequently move back and forth across the track, almost seemingly attempting to block your progress, similar to what would happen in a race in real life. In level 1, you can pretty much just see where the rivals are on the track, and make sure you're not riding in the same lane and pass them at your convenience. As previously stated, the actual game of Hang On is pretty simple. No matter the difficulty level you pick at the beginning, you start out stage 1 with 60 seconds on the clock, and must make it to the end of the stage before time expires to make it to stage 2, and then any leftover time on the clock from stage 1 is added to your available time. This continues until you finish stage 5, which completes the race, and then you start all over again in the next course. As far as I can tell, the courses are all the same, but maybe they get slightly more difficult. I can't say for certain. The goal of the game is to complete the circuit of 5 stages 8 times, and then you restart at course 1. But this time with slightly less time available to finish each stage, until you finally can't go any further due to running out of time. The game isn't very difficult, even racing on level 3 difficulty, as long as you figure out the max speeds you can get through the turns with, and then it's just a matter of dropping to that speed in turns and hitting the gas in the straights. For the accompanying video for this review, I was able to score over 1,000,000 points, and then simply stopped racing after achieving that, but I could have gone longer if I had wanted to keep bumping up the score. The arcade version runs on 16-bit hardware, similar to what would eventually be included in the Genesis, so the home version is certainly a step down. But, considering this game was released in 1986 on 8-bit hardware, I think it looks pretty decent. Each stage in a circuit comes with a different background, with the first stage appearing to be a standard racetrack in the daytime, then a seaside track complete with water, then Monument Valley, which has a Grand Canyon vibe, followed by a nighttime city course, and then back to a race course in the morning, with the sky having an orange tint due to it being daybreak. Along with the different backgrounds, there are also clouds that flow across the screen in another nice detail to go along with the twists and turns of the tracks. The game is very colorful, certainly more than either of the NES initial offerings, and gives a good introduction into Sega's ability to deliver their arcade titles in credible versions on the home front. From a sound perspective, there's not a whole lot going on, with most common audio element being the whine of the engines, which do cycle up and down depending on the rev of the engines. There are also the occasional sound effects that go along with counting down to the start of the race, and when your bike explodes in a fireball due to either running into a rival or an object on the side of the road, but nothing that really showcases the abilities of the system. The game controls well and is actually very simple. Left to move left, right to move right, up to shift up, down to shift down, and then gas and brake with buttons 1 and 2. As stated earlier, Once you figure out the magical speed that you can go through any turn at, approximately 245 kilometers, it really just is about slowing down to that speed when needed and accelerating out of turns and moving left or right to avoid vehicles. The gear shifting mechanic isn't really used, other than recovering from a crash, so it's pretty much accelerating up to high gear and leaving it there. All in all, I'm going to give Hang On 3 stars, as while it's a fairly simple game that doesn't have a whole lot to offer other than shooting for a high score, it's a solid arcade conversion that gives up a bit of graphics and sound, but still brings the feel of the arcade home, minus a giant tilting motorcycle controller. So today, we went about as far back in time as we could for Zilog and Moto, and I think found 2 competent games, even if they were lacking in depth. While no sane person would debate the NES versus the Master System from a pop culture perspective, I think we can definitely say that even in the beginning, the Master System had what it takes from a guts perspective to take on Nintendo. The software library just never quite got there. Tune in next time when we crack open Electronic Arts' first game in the legendary NHL hockey series, just in time for the Stanley Cup Finals. So until next time, remember, whenever you play, have fun, and be excellent to each other. Later!